over an open bag of snacks she had left inside. Another rustling sound came from the floorboard, and Karen realized in horror that it wasn't just one raccoon, it was three. She stumbled back, clutching her chest as if she had just witnessed a murder. What is that? Jake peered inside, biting back laughter. Looks like a little family moved in over the weekend. Guess they got comfortable in your car. Karen gagged, her entire body trembling. Get them out! Get them out! The officer, who had been suppressing his amusement all morning, finally broke. He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Well, ma'am, that's not really a police matter. Karen whipped around to face him. You are an officer of the law. Do something. The officer smirked. Unless they stole something, I don't handle raccoons. Jake shrugged. I could get him out for you. Karen's head snapped toward him, eyes wide with hope. Yes. Yes, do that. Jake rubbed his chin, pretending to think. But I'd hate to touch your car, seeing as you were so clear about that in your note. Karen's eye twitched. I take it back. Just get them out. Jake chuckled and strolled toward his truck, retrieving a long stick. It only took a few minutes of coaxing before the raccoons scurried out, one by one, disappearing into the nearby trees. The last one, the largest of the bunch, took its time, pausing on the driver's seat to stare Karen down before finally jumping out and waddling away. Karen shuddered like she could still feel their presence. Once the car was empty, Karen shot Jake a death glare. You did this on purpose. Jake raised an eyebrow. How exactly did I train wild raccoons to move into your car? Karen had no answer for that, but her hatred burned brighter than the sun. She yanked open the car door, climbed inside, and then immediately screamed again. Jake stepped closer, amused. Now what? Karen threw herself out of the car, holding up her hands, which were now covered in raccoon footprints and what looked suspiciously like chewed-up granola bar crumbs. They ruined my interior. Jake peered inside and whistled. The raccoons had clearly made themselves at home. There were tiny muddy paw prints on the seats, torn-up napkins scattered everywhere, and a distinct smell that suggested they had possibly used the floorboard as a temporary bathroom. Yikes, Jake said, shaking his head. Gonna need more than an air freshener for that. Karen was shaking with rage. You think this is funny? Jake tilted his head. A little bit, yeah. Karen let out an incoherent screech, spun around, and stormed toward her car. I'm taking this to court. You'll regret this. Jake watched her drive off, still chuckling as the officer shook his head. I've been a cop for 15 years, the man said. That might be the funniest thing I've ever seen. Jake smirked. She had it coming. The officer clapped him on the back. Well, she might try to file some kind of complaint, but I doubt it'll go anywhere. You technically did nothing wrong. Jake nodded. Good to know. As the officer drove off, Jake turned back toward his barn, finally able to enjoy the peaceful morning again. He inhaled the fresh air, took in the sight of his farm, and relished the newfound silence. For the first time in a long time, there was no sign of Karen. And that, more than anything, made this the best Monday he'd had in years. Jake had barely settled into his usual morning routine when his phone buzzed again. He knew who it was before he even looked. Karen. He sighed, debating whether to ignore it, but curiosity got the best of him. He swiped to answer, bracing himself. You are going to pay for what you did, Karen hissed, her voice sharp as barbed wire. Jake took his time stirring his coffee. Morning, Karen. Hope your drive was pleasant. You ruined my car. Jake sipped his coffee, letting her rage run its course. I didn't ruin anything. Nature just took its course. Karen let out a noise somewhere between a growl and a shriek. I have filed a formal complaint against you. You think you're so clever, but the law is on my side. Jake leaned back in his chair, watching the sun rise over his fields. That's so. Oh, you'll see, she snapped. Enjoy your last few days of freedom, because you'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. Jake hung up before she could say another word. He had no time for whatever nonsense Karen was brewing, but as he looked toward the town in the distance, he had a feeling things were about to get interesting. Sure enough, 2 days later, he received an official-looking letter in the mail. It was from a law office. Karen had actually followed through. Jake opened it, half expecting some outrageous demands, and he wasn't disappointed. She was suing him for emotional distress, unlawful imprisonment of her vehicle, and damages to personal property. She demanded $50,000 in compensation. Jake burst out laughing. He tossed the letter onto the kitchen table and poured himself another cup of coffee. He wasn't a legal expert, but he knew nonsense when he saw it. The only thing Karen had was nerve. Still, he decided to show up to the hearing, just for the entertainment value. The courthouse was a small one, typical for their town. When Jake arrived, he spotted Karen standing outside, arms crossed, looking smug. She was dressed as if she was about to give a press conference, her suit unnecessarily dramatic for such a ridiculous case. "You finally came to your senses?" she sneered as he walked past. Jake chuckled. "I just wouldn't miss this show for the world." Inside, the judge took his seat, looking mildly annoyed before the case even started. Karen wasted no time launching into her exaggerated sob story. "Your Honor, I have suffered severe trauma because of this man's actions," she began dramatically. "Not only did he imprison my car, but he intentionally trapped wild, disease-ridden animals inside to cause destruction. I have had nightmares. I have suffered great emotional damage. And my car is ruined beyond repair." Jake had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. The judge looked at Karen over the rim of his glasses. "Miss Thompson, do you have evidence that Mr. Harper placed the animals inside your car?" Karen faltered for a moment, then quickly regained her composure. "The circumstances make it obvious. He locked the barn knowing my car was inside. The raccoons wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for him." The judge turned to Jake. "Mr. Harper, do you have any evidence to support your side?" Jake pulled out his phone and played the security footage from his barn. The judge leaned forward, watching as the video clearly showed Karen parking her own car, leaving the note and walking away. Then came the best part. The video caught the exact moment the raccoons crawled through an open window, sniffing around before making themselves at home. Karen's face paled as she watched the screen. The judge sat back in his chair, unimpressed. "Miss Thompson, I see no foul play here. Mr. Harper did not steal or damage your vehicle. In fact, this footage proves that the raccoons entered of their own accord." Karen's jaw tightened. But, he still locked the barn." The judge sighed. "Which he had every right to do. It's his property." Karen's face twisted into a scowl. "This is ridiculous. He knew it would inconvenience me." The judge gave her a long, tired look. "You trespassed, Miss Thompson. If anything, you're the one who should be facing legal consequences." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, the door to the courtroom swung open. Everyone turned as a man stepped inside, Greg Thompson, Karen's husband. His face was unreadable as he walked toward the judge. "I'd like to say something," he announced. Karen froze. "Greg? What are you doing here?" Greg ignored her, handing a folder to the judge. "I have some information that might be relevant to this case." The judge opened the folder and skimmed through the pages. Jake watched as Karen's smug expression melted into panic. Greg crossed his arms. "Karen doesn't own that car." "I do." The courtroom fell silent. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. "She took my SUV without permission," Greg continued. "And she's been doing stuff like this for years. Entitlement, boundary pushing, lying, this is just another example. I thought it was time someone finally put a stop to it." Karen looked like she'd been slapped. "You traitor!" Greg shrugged. "I'm just tired of cleaning up your messes." The judge nodded slowly, setting the folder aside. "Well, that certainly changes things." The next few minutes were a blur of legal formalities, but when the gavel finally struck, the case was dismissed. Karen's ridiculous lawsuit had been thrown out completely. She sat in stunned silence as the realization sank in. Jake got up, tipping his hat at her. Good luck with that emotional distress. Karen sputtered as he walked away, but nothing she said mattered anymore. The case was dead, and her reputation? Ruined. Greg caught up with Jake outside. You handled that well, he said. Jake chuckled. Didn't have to do much. She did all the work herself. Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. I think I've finally had enough. I filed for divorce this morning. Jake wasn't surprised. Probably for the best. Greg nodded. She's all yours now. Jake stiffened. No, thanks. They both laughed, shaking hands before parting ways. A week later, the town was buzzing with the aftermath. Karen had become a walking cautionary tale, her humiliation spreading faster than wildfire. Businesses weren't as friendly, neighbors didn't tolerate her antics, and her usual tricks stopped working. And then came the final blow. One morning, as she was heading out, a tow truck pulled into her driveway. Karen screamed as they hooked up her SUV. Greg hadn't just divorced her, he had reclaimed his car too. Jake sat on his porch, watching the scene unfold with a satisfied grin. For the first time in years, his barn stayed empty. No Karen. No SUV. Just peace and quiet at last.